Hello, and welcome to the LawCast, brought to you by the Law Factory, who provide a tailored and comprehensive legal account service for solicitors and their firms. The LawCast is where we discuss legal news, changes within the legal profession, and provide tips, tricks, and recommendations to help you run your firm.
Hello and welcome to the LawCast. This is episode 3. The LawCast is where we discuss legal news and provide tips and tricks for helping you run your law firm. And this week I'm really excited because I'm joined by Karen Edwards, who is the head of professional development at the ILFM, and she's going to be here talking to us about lockup and the importance of cash flow, and also sort of a general chit chat about what the ILFM does and that kind of thing, and who they are and how you can get involved. So really great to meet you, Karen.
Thanks, Alex, and it's really nice to be here, and thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. Perhaps you could sort of give our listeners a bit of an overview as to sort of like who you are and where you come from.
Who I am and where I come from.
Yep.
Yes. I'm Karen. I'm as Alex said, I'm head of professional development at the ILFM. Prior to that, I've been working in legal practice for around 18 years or so. So qualified as a legal executive in 2010. And worked in various roles prior to that, support, finance, and then finished up as a director of an Oxfordshire law firm, heading up the finance team, operations, COFA, all of the compliance obligations fell to me, which was great. So it was nice to come to the ILFM and to bring all of that knowledge and experience to help support our members going forward, and lots of interest in finance and compliance, which is where I ended up following additional training in accounting and finance and compliance. So it's really nice to be able to give back a little bit.
Absolutely, it's a great organisation. I'm a member of ILFM as well, and I know a lot of other people that are, and it's like one big happy family. I feel at the ILFM, everyone sort of puts their arms around each other and looks after each other. And I know that I've been on several virtual branch meetings with you guys, all talking about various different subjects and stuff, and it's really nice to have lots of people on those, all wanting to just do right by everybody else and look after everybody who's involved. It's really nice. So I can't praise ILFM enough, to be honest. So it's really great that you're happy to join me on the LawCast. So
yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, great. All right, so let's get straight into it. So we as with all the other episodes that we've done, we sort of start off with a little bit of news, have a bit of a chit chat. There's a couple of topics that I find quite interesting, that I'd quite like to have a look at, and then later on we'll sort of get into our main sort of topic as well. So the first one is it's a bit of news from CILEx. So CILEx they've unveiled plans to introduce changes in titles to try and make things a little bit easier and more approachable, perhaps for consumers. So they've sort of gone with sort of chartered. So it's going to be chartered lawyer, chartered litigator, like chartered conveyancer, I suppose. They're trying to sort of like target it and be a bit more clear as to the kind of law that you can expect from their members. And this kind of came out of left field for me. I wasn't expecting this at all when this cropped up. I haven't really heard anything about it. It just sort of appeared, and I thought it was quite an interesting thing. Are we seeing that kind of thing, do you think, Karen, for consumers sort of getting a little bit confused navigating legal stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I think this has been coming for quite some time. I think it's also coming off the back of the consultation that CILEx have been going through to change their regulation to the SRA potentially, and there's been some updates on that recently. And I think part of that is trying to give some parity between legal executives and solicitors, which has been an issue and is still an issue, actually. It's something that's quite close to my heart, having gone through the CILEx qualification route. So I feel some empathy as to how some of the members are feeling on this. But I think the issue it's trying to address is around giving the public, but also I think addressing some of the culture in the legal industry and firms, that legal executives are just as qualified to practice law as solicitors, and to deal with some of that misunderstanding, some of that sort of history of solicitors being slightly above others, lawyers potentially. I mean, certainly CILEx members have felt that, and you see a lot of the public perhaps saying, I don't know what a legal executive is. What does that mean? It doesn't, everyone knows what a solicitor is. It's a term that's been around for hundreds of years. So the chartered legal executive, I think for a lot of public, don't really understand what that means. And so when some people would say, I want a solicitor, but I do the same job, I'm a lawyer, but I don't understand what that means. A chartered legal executive, that's not a solicitor. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding that needs to be addressed. And I think it's a good thing, because they are qualified lawyers, and I think that having that lawyer name in the title might help address some of that confusion and misunderstanding. And then hopefully address some of the issues within firms and the industry as well, because there's still a lot of prejudice around. We immediately, and some unconscious bias, we see it in recruitment adverts, for example. If you're recruiting for a fee earner, you immediately would say a solicitor PQE, however many years, whereas a legal executive is just capable, but they would immediately perhaps feel excluded from that because they're asking for a solicitor, and that's it. Whereas there's a wider pool of talent to choose from. So I think it's a good thing. It'd be interesting to see a bit more of the detail, and also I think giving the public more clarity as to what area of specialism that chartered lawyer would be in, because I think that's the difference as well, is having the specialism of area that they're going to be practicing in. So like say chartered property lawyer or chartered probate lawyer or whatever it might be.
I think
chartered litigator.
That's really positive. That because I gotta say, I gotta admit, I didn't see this coming from the kind of work that I do. It's just something I didn't really see coming. But the more I've sort of read into it and looked at it, I think having the specialism there, I think chartered lawyer is okay. That's fair enough, but I think the specialism, I think, is where it's really going to major it, because people are really, whatever you're looking for. So I need a personal injury lawyer, right? I need a property lawyer. I need a probate lawyer. I need and actually having the chartered personal injury lawyer, that's much clearer for anyone out there that's looking for that.
Definitely.
And I think that is a really positive thing, and perhaps it will also sort of, I don't know, maybe empower more so the legal execs in this world, and also sort of highlight the roles that they actually do. Just saying, oh, they're a legal executive is okay, but being able to say, well, actually, I do this. This is where I specialize. This is what I do. This is how good I am. I think that's a really positive thing.
Yeah, and I think just being able to have that information to say I'm a chartered property lawyer, and that kind of says what it says on the tin. If you say I'm a chartered legal executive, you then got to try and explain what that actually means, and there's a lack of understanding. Whereas as long as if you've got the lawyer and the specialism in the title, instantly you've got some confidence, some comfort. The public understand what that means. So hopefully it will give some, like you say, some empowerment and confidence, and some justified parity with others, that they are just as qualified to do the job.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely that. No, yeah, I think it's a very, very, very positive thing, and I'm kind of looking forward to see it. I'm not sure. It's only going to be a few months, isn't it, now, before they actually finalise this consultation, isn't it?
I think it's November. I think there's a date around November time.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, November.
Yeah, maybe some more detail will come out about what that would actually look like and how that would be structured.
Yeah, because you can, and for those that don't know, you can actually download a copy of the consultation as well, and we'll put links for that out there. The consultation is CILEx's Enhancing Consumer Trust and Confidence consultation on reforms to our governance, membership structure and regulatory delegation. It's dated August 2023, but I think, as we said, I think this is going to be quite a fast thing. So we'll put links to that. You can download the PDF. It's quite extensive. I mean, what we got 23 pages of this consultation to run through. There's lots of topics, so they're clearly wanting to have quite an overhaul. And then obviously there's the the talk about their involvement with the SRA as well, which should be very interesting.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
certainly, and I think a lot of things, if they do go down that route, will change. I imagine there will be certain changes from ILFM's perspective as well, with the literature that you guys put out as well.
Absolutely, yes, because to cater for those both regulatory regimes and all the different practices and codes and rules that come with it. If that would obviously need to be realigned if that sort of change of regulator happens for CILEx.
Yeah,
and we will be working closely with them to help do that.
Great stuff. All right, brilliant. So, the other topic that I wanted to look at, the other little bit of news that I wanted to look at is talking about conveyances. Now we know that conveyances, I mean, they're having a rough time. Let's be fair.
Really tough
it's
time.
been really tough for conveyancers lately, right from COVID all the way through COVID. I mean, they were right the way through when people were locked down in their houses. These guys were some of the most overworked people trying to do it from home, had like kids at home as well at the time as well, trying to maintain the professionalism and being able to do everything that they're supposed to do with all this stuff going on. So I do feel for them, and also with all the ups and downs with the stamp duty changes and all that kind of stuff, and the mad rush a couple of years ago. Was it 2021? I think was ridiculous. Everyone was buying houses in 2021, and they worked so hard. There's been a survey done about conveyances and the costs that they do, and there is an argument that the majority of conveyances should increase their fees. I'm a big advocate for that. As a legal cashier,
Me too.
I see how much conveyances on the whole don't make. That sounds pretty tough, but I think they should be increasing their fees. I completely agree with the findings of this survey, because there's this sort of feel that you should try and keep your prices low and be competitive. But in my view, you've got to think about all of the costs that go to doing that particular transaction, and not just the salary. We're in a cost of living crisis at the moment as well. Let's not forget, and inflation is off the chart, although it has slowed a little bit, I believe. But you've got to think of all of the other stuff that goes with that. So every conveyancer is going to have certain secretarial staff that work for them. They're going to have other back office functions, such as myself, legal cashiers, people like us, and all that kind of thing. And I just don't think that the average conveyancing net profit costs for a bill, I just don't think they're high enough to be sustainable.
No, I mean, property conveyancing particularly, it's always a difficult area to be profitable in. And I think a lot of that is driven, like you say, by market pressures to be competitive with your peers on what you're charging and fixed fees and things like that. We know it's difficult. I think it's also down to the value that you're giving your client and the value of the knowledge that these people have. And these are technical property specialists, and other solicitors, lawyers in different practice areas would be able to make far more money for the firm as well, and also have potentially a better experience in the workplace. Like you were just saying, it's been a really tough time for conveyancers. A lot of them are leaving the profession and feeling overworked, undervalued. And if you think about the time of somebody's life when you're going through buying a house, how stressful it can be, and the lawyer that's involved in that, helping the client get that over the line. It's one of the most expensive purchases you will ever make. It's such a stressful process, and it's almost disproportionate to estate agents. Now, I'm not going to be bashing estate agents here at all, but when you think about the prices that some of them obtain for just advertising and marketing a house for sale, I'm sure there's much more that goes on than just that. But that was sort of on the face of it. Whereas the lawyer that's gone through all those years of law school, all those practical years of experience to make sure, as well as being a high risk area of law for firms, it's particularly if you do a lot of conveyancing, it's something that will drive your PI premiums up, for example. So, the risk factor, the stress factor, the client experience factor, they're going through a stressful time. They might be quite demanding because of that. The hours that they have to work, And the way that the property industry operates as well is not very efficient. I think that doesn't always help. Things could be done a lot smoother, but I think it's some of that is just how the industry is at the moment. I think a lot of it could be challenged and changed, but that's a different issue. But I think I'm a huge advocate for changing property prices and increasing them based on the value that you're giving as a lawyer, the value that the client's getting in terms of that life experience, what you're doing for them in their life, and as well as the risk factors it places on the firm. And I would love to be able to come to a point where property teams are earning comparable fees to estate agents, because where does the majority of the work sit? The hard work and the expertise and the risk that the firms and the lawyers take on, they don't get paid anywhere near enough for all of that work, expertise, stress, hours, risk, compared to estate agents. Sometimes you'd pay estate agents on some properties 30,000 five-figure sums. It's whereas no way would law firms normally charge that. So it's a bit of a backwards system, and I think it's something that I would feel very passionately about changing. And in our previous firm, I've worked with a lot of property lawyers over the time, and they're fantastic people, and they always feel undervalued and overworked because of the nature of the, and it's very much this pressure to pile it high, sell it cheap, because that's the model of the area and the service. But there is something to be said for increasing prices and offering quality over quantity. If you're able to take on less but charge more, surely that's a win-win in terms of having less workload, but be able to give a higher level of client service because you're not so stressed, you're not so overworked, and the client sees the value in that. And also, you're more likely to get it right. Excuse me. If you are having all these workloads, pressures from clients, working all hours because you've got so many transactions going on, and you're not getting paid very much, mistakes can start to creep in, and that's where the risk profile gets affected. So there's lots of components to it, but I think ultimately property lawyers 100% do not get paid enough for what they do, and we should be looking to charge higher fees. And it's just how you start that process about challenging that status quo. And some firms do it already. They offer client service guarantees, they offer different kind of platinum, gold, bronze, silver offerings to clients depending on what they're willing to pay for in terms of the different service offerings they might get. So people are starting to do it. Value-based pricing is a thing now that's coming out more and more. So there is change. I think things are starting to change. But I would like to see it change faster, and for the fees to be more in line with what estate agents charge.
Yeah, I think it needs to change faster, definitely. But one thing I often look at. I mean, when you were talking about quality and stuff, I moved. I was part of the problem 2 years ago because we moved, and then I've just done a remortgage, and I had a brilliant conveyancing company, solicitor's practice, not conveyancing company, a solicitor's practice, where I live. Local firm, highly recommended by people, really, really good. Did our conveyancing. We had one property that we were going to buy that fell through, and then we eventually settled on this place. And they were brilliant. Like, the service was quality. It's the kind of service that I expect sort of my clients would give, like the clients that Law Factory works for. They are SMEs, small medium enterprises. They're like little families, loads of little families everywhere, and they all work really, really hard to do the best for their clients, right? And that's what I got from this firm. Brilliant. And then we remortgaged, and we did the financial advice and all that kind of stuff. Financial advisor said, when you remortgage, you can use these guys. And I looked at it and thought, okay. He said they're pretty good, and they're pretty reasonably priced. And I thought, okay, cost wise, I'll just go with what he says, right? And I went with him, and I wish I hadn't, because it was clear that they were this huge organization that was very much, let's just get you out the door and go through the motions and all that kind of stuff. Contact was not good, and it became a real problem, and it got to the point where, like, I didn't actually know whether I'd completed. And it took them when was it? It was about 6 days afterwards, because we went through a whole weekend and most of the following week before I'd actually had written confirmation from them they completed. It was ridiculous, and I was going out of my mind. The
Wow.
guys in the office were looking at me, and I was bright red faced and really stressed. And they're going, "You're right,
Basic
Al,"
communication, isn't it?
and it was a real problem. And I kind of looking at it, I think, God, I wish I just kind of ignored what they'd said and just gone with what I know, knowing full well that this really good, solid solicitors practice that has been there for years and years and years and years and years, who looks after its clients, I should have just gone with them. And if they cost more, then they cost more, but you know that you're going to get the service that you need. Well, the other thing as well the other thing that I worry about a little bit, and I wonder if law firms are taking this into account when they're looking at their charges and stuff like that, is first of all, they want to be competitive, and then you've got the transparency issue where they have to put all their prices online so everybody can see what they charge, but also for as a general customer, someone who's not in this field, who's not a lawyer, not a legal cashier, whatever, when they get the bill for the work, the bill more often than not includes all the disbursements as well, including all of the search fees that will be on there, your land registry charges and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't just go on the completion statement; it will go on the bill as well. And because all of that costs so much. I mean, especially when you're dealing with things like searches, they're quite a lot of money. I mean, you're talking upwards of 300 quid for your searches. It makes me wonder if the solicitor looks at it, or the firm looks at that bill and goes, "Well, God, the client's already having to pay £200-300 for searches. I mean, can we really go higher than £750-800? Because the client's not going to wear it, and then the firm ends up taking the hit rather than the client who's actually getting the benefit of the work that they're doing."
Yeah. And that's the sort of the confidence issue of being able to price it to your value. And that's where, value-based pricing has its place, I think. These people are experts and specialists in this field. They've spent a long time studying, training, getting to this point. And the market pressures make it so that they have to feel they can't charge a lot of money because they might not get the work, and they need the work because they've got targets to meet, and the internal pressures that firms will have on their teams to meet those targets. And property, as you say, when it's low value and it's fixed fee, it's not easy to obtain the level of margins that you want to obtain without almost being a factory shop, charging a low fee and doing lots of them, thinking that's the way to do it. And that's when all the issues will start, and that's where all the problems lie. So for me, it's about flipping the model on its head completely, but it's giving firms and the lawyers doing the work the confidence to try it, and to be able to say it's okay to turn work down, because I certainly wouldn't want to be in a place where I'm completely overworked with too much work that I'm not getting a lot of money. I know the firm's not making a lot of money. There's pressures there on targets and margins. So, be choosy. Be choosy about who you're taking on, what work you're taking on, for the people that are going to value the work that you do, rather than it's just a cost issue. There is you get what you pay for, don't you? And I think a lot of people do tend to choose a cheap option because sometimes budgets are constrained, and particularly at the moment, people don't have a lot of disposable income at the moment, and there is a factor in that. But when you think about the risk and the type of service and the life experience that you're going through, it can potentially be even more costly in terms of financial, but also emotionally, if you choose someone that then completely gets it wrong, and you're then having to spend however many months trying to fix it, which is more money, it's more stress, it's more time. So trying to deal with the problem up front, I think, is better. And I think part of that would be raising prices, trying to kind of rebalance the client expectations about cost and value, what they're getting for their money. They have no qualms with shelving out 5-figure sums for estate agents' fees. And where does the majority of the work and the risk lie?
I think it's about, I agree, and it's weird, isn't it? Because with it, certainly if you compare it with estate agents, you kind of sit there and go, "Oh, it's what's expected. We expect that we're going to have to pay 1% or however much it is on the property," and you're sitting there kind of going, "Okay, but they're the all the risk and looking after your client money, like just if we just take into overheads alone, like professional indemnity insurance, right? It's just it's the worst time. It's one of the worst times of year for a practice conveyancing, because you know it's going to be higher, because it always is higher. It's just how much, and you know and that's because we're looking after client money and we want to be safe and we want to be insured. We have to have it. It's just how it is. But all the risk that goes around looking after client money, and the responsibility and all that kind of stuff, and all the compliance that goes with it. I mean,
And
yeah,
which is even more so for property, you know,
yeah,
and the more you do, the higher your risk profile. And I think again, it's always tends to be the majority of complaints and claims that come through. If you were to look and really analyze it, I'm sure there'd be a high percentage that will fall to property teams, sadly. And I think a lot of that is because they're just doing too much. There's too many pressures, too many mistakes creep in, and it's how can we as an industry and also from the public side work together to address that and make it safer for the public and for the people doing these jobs. We can't forget that these are people, these are human beings, and we need to look after them as well. You know, there is a financial cost, of course, but there's also the people cost as well. You know, the mental health and well-being cost that goes with it. And as you said, people are leaving the profession in droves at the moment because, you know, they've been through a really, really difficult time, you know, over the last 3 to 4 years. And it's what are we doing from a well-being perspective to help address that as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's start paying for the value of the work, and properly valuing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot to be said for conveyancers. I think they work really, really hard, and they put up with a hell of a lot.
They're fantastic. Yeah, they get a raw deal. They really do, and they're great people. They're great lawyers. They're great at what they do. They take on a huge risk. You know, it's not an easy area of law, and they should be you know, recompensed accordingly. Definitely, and firms should be able to charge, you know, proportionately to the value and the risk of that particular work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. So yeah, those were the sort of the two topics. I sort of the two news articles that I found quite interesting this time around. I think yeah, they're very, very interesting to get your take on it as well. So yeah, really, really great. But I think it's time now we sort of looked at our main area, shall we say, our main topic, and this is something that I think all law firms can benefit from, and that is understanding lockup and what it is and the benefits of good cash flow and debtor management. So perhaps for our viewers that don't know, perhaps you'd be able to just explain what is meant by lockup.
So lockup, yeah, it's basically the time it takes for a firm to get paid for the work that it does after it's done the work, it's billed the work, and that includes, you know, work in progress, bills and disbursements. So it's essentially, you know, how much of your cash is locked up in unbilled work, unpaid bills, and unbilled disbursements, really. So that's essentially what it is. And yeah, it's something that is it's a topic very, very close to me. It's something that's been drummed into me for a very, very long time, and it's never left me. And I've almost become quite obsessive about it,
Yeah,
which I don't make any apologies for.
No, quite right, quite right. We're quite obsessive about it at Law Factory as well, because obviously as legal cashiers we see this all the time.
Yeah.
It's very much a case of debtors. How do you deal with them? What are you doing about your work in progress? How do you? How much of that work that you've done is actually recoverable? You know, are you doing things gratis? And the thing that I see with lockup is that lockup should ultimately help determine what your internal procedure should be. You know, right down to like, for example, lockup with legal aid work. Now, legal aid is a funny one because people say, well, it's legal aid. We don't actually end up with a debtor. Well, actually, hang on a minute. What about your lockup includes work in progress? And what are you doing about it? You know, what does your are you doing POAs, for example, on a certificate file? Are you going, or are you just racking up time all the way to the claim one? And then what's the knock-on effect of that? You know, are you doing fixed fee work? Okay, well, if you're doing fixed fee work on civil cases, for example, are you going over the fixed fee every time? And how far over it are you going? So do we need to look at procedures there so that you're sort of on or thereabouts the fixed fee, depending on the kind of work that you're doing, how long that case then lasts. So it for me, it just drills right down into process to try and get it so that, you know, your lockup days are not that long, right?
Definitely. And I think process and training, and I mean, it goes through the whole kind of operational cycle of a file, really, doesn't it? Like you're saying, having that robust policy or process to say, right, you know, even things like money on account, having a firm policy on that. Of course, there will be exceptions depending on the work type, but generally, for a lot of service areas where you generally tend to see a high lockup, you know, things like probate, that's quite a common one. That's always quite difficult to get money up front on. But litigation, that can usually be quite a high lockup area.
Yes.
There's no reason why you can't focus down and get money on account for that. Looking at credit checks on clients, for example, having conversations about whether clients can fund, how are they going to fund? Do you have authority procedures for having to agree a payment plan if clients are struggling to pay?
Yep.
And making that part of your risk assessment. You know, a financial risk assessment is, can this client afford to pay our fees? And it goes right the way through. And like you say, you know, whether you bill regularly as well, then if you get to a point where you've got a debt, it's how robust you are at chasing that. Where does the responsibility lie? What resources have you got internally? And, you know, it's quite interesting also to do an exercise, really, is to understand what does, you know, say a 30 days cash mean to you. You know, if you could put a tangible figure on it, to be able to say, if you've got quite a long lockup period, you know, so I don't know, if you've got 150 days lockup, which would be quite horrifying if you did, but you know, it's what does, if you were to reduce that by 30 days, what does that mean in cash terms? What does that, you know, how much does lockup mean for a month's cash coming into your business? And it could be, you know, quite high six-figure sums for some firms. So it's trying to also get that information through to the teams, because I think a lot of the responsibility kind of sits, well, it does, because it's a finance function, there is a finance element to it, but a lot of it sits operationally with the fee earning teams.
Yes,
you know, they're responsible for doing the work, for time recording properly, and for billing appropriately as well, making sure they're not writing off too much, and getting money on account, having those conversations, managing the client's expectations on costs. All of that sort of client service delivery has an impact on lockup. But then it's when you get to a stage of having to chase your debts, you know, where again it's for fee, and it's like, oh no, it's the finance. I've done my bit now. The credit control teams do that.
Yeah. Well, I think there's argument, and I wrote an article about this before. I did an article recently called what was it called? Credit control or credit out of control is what I called it.
That's a good title.
And it's thanks. And it was all about sort of in relation to lockup, but more about like chasing debts but making it easy for people. And one of the things that I spoke about in there was whose responsibility is it to get the money in? And I kind of look at it, and historically it's always been, all right, well, the fee earner on the file, he's the one dealing, or she's the one dealing with the clients. They're dealing with the clients. So it's their responsibility because they're dealing with the clients, right? And you kind of look at it and go, well, hold on a minute. Is there specialism credit control, or is there specialism law? I'm pretty sure it's the latter. So as a firm, I personally think it would be better for it to be made clear from the outset by the fee earner who is doing the work to their clients, and say, look, when it comes to whether your affordability, whether you can afford us to do the work, what we're doing, sort of how we're going to bill you, when you're going to get billed, all of that isn't done by me, so don't talk to me about it. It's done by this team or this person, because they specialize in that. But it also, in my opinion, keeps the fee earner then objective. So the fee earner's just going, I'm doing the work. If there's an issue where, I don't know, there's too much time being spent, or their client can't afford it, or something from the fee earner has to change that the finance team or the credit control team have noticed, then they can have that internal discussion and work it out. And if there is an issue, then generally I think they have that conversation, and that credit control team then speaks to the client and says, look, this is the position. For example, I had a client years and years ago. God, the firm isn't even running now. She was working on a divorce case, and the guy wasn't doing particularly well. And she knew that, bless her, but she carried on. And I'm sitting there as the cashier saying, you need to get some interim bills done here because the time's racking up. You've got to do some interim bills. And she paid disbursements out and everything. You need to get some interim bills done. And for one reason or another, she didn't do it. And she got right to the end of the case. And we're talking like tens of thousands of pounds here in costs. And then presented him with this bill. And the guy kind of looked at it and went, my wife has just taken me to the cleaners. Like, I can't pay this. And she had to write most of it off. And it's because she's trying to be objective with the client and make the client happy and look after the client as best she could, knowing all the time that she's not going to win this one and she's a bit of a lost cause, but still racking up all this debt. And of course, all that time that she's then written off, she's not spent on other clients who would pay. Yeah. So the firm is at a massive detriment, and it's a real problem. So for me, I think I'd like to see a time where jobs are segregated, and it's not necessarily the fee earner's job. And I think there needs to be processes put in place with the legal cashiers team, whoever that may be, to regularly update everybody on what's going on.
Yeah.
And have conversations and determine how how that whip is billed, and how those bills are then chased down and what the terms are. But also then make it easy for the client to pay. Like the software that we have now, like, is incredible. Legal, we're in the best period we've ever been in for legal software, in my view, because you can just bolt stuff on to what you've already got.
Definitely.
Including all these payment systems. Nobody pays by cash and check anymore, really. I mean, a few people pay by check occasionally, but mostly it's done by card and bank transfer, right?
Absolutely. On your phone, easy peasy.
Yeah, send a link. Right, here you go. I'll do some more work for you once you sent me 500 quid on account. Here's the link.
Yeah.
And then you start, and then you carry on. You do all your bills through it, and you make it so easy for the client to pay, because clients generally, if they don't have to pay on time, or they think there's a way that they might be able to swing it this month or whatever, they'll just either they won't necessarily be forthcoming in making that payment. Not everybody wants to pay their lawyer as soon as the bill is raised. But if you make it super easy for them and almost say, look, you need to pay so that we can continue working for you, then you're going to get your money in, right?
Yeah, and I think that's certainly my experience, and it made such a difference. And being able for the clients to do it at their convenience as well, any time of the day, at home, having access to everything online these days on your phone is incredible. I think it can also be, going back to your previous point, I think looked at different ways as well. I think lawyers, they are trained to do law, but I think times are changing a little bit now, and we are asking more of them in terms of commercial savvy and being more commercially aware and thinking like business people as well. And I think some of that responsibility needs to sit within teams, and certainly whether you are having weekly, monthly team meetings, and perhaps one of the standing items on the agenda or a KPI that the teams are looking at is your lockup, your unbilled WIP. What's at the end of every month, what's left? Is it good WIP? Is it bad WIP? Looking at the profile. And part of that is also having good reporting, having systems that give you really good information to show you how much WIP's there, but what's the age profile of that as well? Where's the risk of that WIP not being billed or not being recovered because it's too old? And having decent MI and management information as well to be able to sort of cascade through to teams. And I think being transparent and trying to build up that financial awareness within your firm can only be a good thing, because I think everybody needs to be more aware of the financial impact on the business, which law firms are, they are businesses, of lockup and unpaid bills, unbilled WIP, things that they need to be thinking about, getting money on account, all of these things that we just talked about. What's the end impact? What are the stakes of not focusing on that? And I think sometimes you could, if you had quite a long lockup period, say over 3 months, that's 3 months of expenses going out, 3 months of salary cycles that have been paid before you as a business have been paid. Now imagine the cash impact that would have on a firm trying to pay all of those salaries, expenses, if on average you're not getting paid yourself for over 3 months. I mean, that's quite a lot of information to work with and try and get teams to be aware of. But it's difficult because it's not what they've come into the law to do. You know, they've got a job, they've got targets, they've got pressures, they've got things that they want to do. But I think, and sometimes when you have a lot of focus on lockup and cash flow, sometimes the message might get out to teams that, oh, the firm's in financial trouble. There's all this extra focus and pressure on cash flow. But I mean, in my opinion, it should always be there. You know, it's something that should always be on. You know, someone should always be on it every day, every week, every month. Law firms are expensive businesses and they have a lot of cash to pay out, and they've only got generally one source of income. You know, client interest being an additional one at the minute because the rates are so high. But I think trying to make teams and others in the business understand the impact and what it means when we talk about lockup and why it's so important and what they can do to help. Because I feel like there needs to be some responsibility. I think what we want to try and do is avoid getting to a stage where we're having to do too much at the other end, credit control, chasing when we're in a bit of a pickle, and we need to start getting, it's great to have the reporting, the monitoring and dealing with it. And there will always be debtors, because depending on the service type, we talked about probate, for example, that could take months to get paid. So you will have, depending on the areas of law, but trying to front load those areas where you can make a difference. You know, that can be the types of law, the service areas that then lend themselves to lower lockup periods. Those are the sorts of things that you can win by front loading those, you know, the cash and getting that up front, and all the other things we talked about in terms of process and policy and software, and so much that could be done to help now.
Yeah, I think it's being proactive is crucial, really. And you know, I agree, every single team, head of department, should have an idea of what lockup is every month, every couple of weeks. They need to have and have meetings about it and talk about it. You know, I'm not saying get everybody in the department involved, but certainly head of department or top two in that department need it needs to be highlighted. And things like, well, you've got aged WIP, you've got a file that's sat there and it's like, well, hold on a minute, this file, the balance on this file hasn't changed for a month. So that's 30 days there straight away on one file where nothing's happened, you haven't billed it. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we're going to be able to bill it straight away. That's not the point here. In my opinion, the point is identifying these files and going, right, well, I need an answer. Like, we've got a short list of files that we're not happy about. I'm not saying that you have to bill them. It's probably, you might have 5 of them where there's a perfectly good reason why you can't bill them. But there's probably 5 there that have been overlooked. So we need to know what's going on. And if you have overlooked it, state what you're going to do and put yourself a time scale in to get it done, so that it's not sitting there at the end of next month and we know that we've got some positive movement on it. And because otherwise, at the end of the day, we're talking about the issues with conveyancing and the cost and the value of the work. Well, what's the point in doing all this work if we're not getting paid for it? And that sounds really obvious, doesn't it? But the amount of times that I see, especially when Law Factory gets called in to do sort of accounts reconstruction, or we get called in to help fix problems and that kind of thing, and look at things. One of the age debt part, we start with the compliance stuff. That's the first job, but straight after that, I'm looking at the matter listing and the WIP reports, and I'm saying, okay, well, where are we owed money? Bank account's not looking overly healthy at the moment. Where's the money at? And then we start subdividing it by fee earner or by head of department or department itself, work type, whatever, and going through all of those and just going, right, okay. One of my main tactics for this as well is really, really simple. I will pull off an age debt report. I will split it between work type or department or fee earner, and I'll send it out to the fee earners or the heads of department, and I'll just say, look, these files, I don't care what the balance says. Put a C next to everything that you think is dead, like a C for closed. Everything that's closed that you think is finished, put C next to. And like most of them will have a C next to them, and there'll just be a leftover debtor balance that they haven't chased down. And you sit there and you go, well, okay, well, you've told me that this file's finished, right? But you've got like 600 quid bill there. What's going on? And right, okay, well, that bill's 3 months old, 4 months old. Where's the money? oh, I've never been told about it. And it's that sort of communication that's required. But like, I'm coming at it too late at that point. Like
Yeah,
we've come in to help fix a problem. So, but
absolutely.
that's like way too late.
That's
And
way too late.
it's harder, and it also, the other thing as well is it doesn't look good on the firm to the client the longer you leave it, because if you send a client a bill and then you don't chase them for say 6 months, and it's maybe a small matter, client's conveniently forgotten about it or whatever, and you then come back to them after 6 months and say, oh, by the way, you owe us this bill from X because we did this for you, it doesn't look good. It reeks of mismanagement. It reeks of a problem being there, because, well, hang on, why are you chasing me 6 months after you issued it? Like, why didn't you chase me 30 days after you issued it? So it's then acknowledging those problems, turning them around so that your historical stuff is sorted, and then, much like we do with compliance and stuff like that, with firms that say have breaches or have had issues in the past, you fix the old stuff and then look at the new stuff and go, how are we going to stop this happening again? Right? What are we going to do now? What's the next step? Are we going to have regular meetings? Are we going to have just reports sent out? How are we going to organize ourselves to do this?
Definitely. Proactiveness is the way forward, and process.
Yeah.
Having the right tools to look at the right information at the right time, and have a process in place that everybody knows to follow, so that you're getting that information at the right time, and you can act, and then you can act on it, before it's too late. And like you say, going in when you've got a massive problem to fix, and then that's not a good place that anyone wants to be.
No, it's really not.
Also, I think, trying to change the narrative a little bit in law firms about trying to focus on cash in, and rather than just billing revenue targets and WIP targets, because there's a lot, we know that that's the traditional model for a lot of firms, and that's where a lot of the focus and pressure sits. And you can understand why some fee earners and teams kind of forget almost to collect the money, because they've done, they've met their targets, they've billed however much they needed to bill that month. So trying to add in the cash collection targets as part of that as well, so that they don't forget that that isn't just the end of their job once they've billed. They've got to get the money in as well. And they then hopefully proactively manage that client, right from the beginning in a better way, to make sure that we're not left with these huge debtors at the end of the day.
And speak up. That's my other word of advice, is speak
Yeah.
up. If you're a lawyer and you're in a firm where it is your responsibility to collect those debtors, speak up. If you're having problems, just tell people. If it's one client or 20 clients, it doesn't matter. It's better that you say, look, I'm having problems getting this. Can you help me? Because there's someone at the firm that can help me. Can one of the partners get involved? Because tell you what, if you got a fee earner who's, as a client, client's dealing with a fee earner or whatever, but then that client gets a phone call from a partner who states that he or she is a partner, that client is going to very swiftly start reconsidering why they haven't paid the bill.
No,
because
definitely.
it's been escalated. At the end of the day, it's been escalated. So I definitely think that. And I think also, just moving on to like cash flow as well within the firm. I think quite often I see firms that don't use a cash flow, and don't sort of try. They don't sort of try and predict where they're going to be and monitor what's likely to come out, or look at budgets and stuff like that. They just kind of sign up to having all these direct debits coming out, all these suppliers they got to pay, and all this kind of stuff. But and obviously taxes and things as well, and salaries. But they're not forward thinking and plotting it and trying to work out when they're going to receive the money in order to fund these things. And it just ends up being a bit scrappy. So I'm like I think, every firm should work with their legal cashier to try and get some sort of cash flow put in place, so that there's an element of predictability.
Definitely. And it's such a useful tool, and it's one of the things that you can quite easily become obsessive about. And it was something that I got quite obsessive about, which is a good thing. But having a long-term forecast, which was great to see the bigger picture. And it's not easy to do that. Some of the things you kind of have to kind of guess quite far ahead in the future, but at least it gives you an idea of where you're going. But having a more daily, weekly forecast was where we were just focused down all the time, and we just asking people all the time that had responsibility for incurring costs on behalf of the business, whoever that was, constant communication between the finance team and who was incurring costs so that the cash flow is up to date. As soon as you've agreed a fee that's either not in the budget already or, you know, isn't in cash flow for whatever reason, have that constant communication. So we're updating it all the time.
Yep.
So we were updating it almost daily and making sure that we could see what was coming in, what was going out, extra expenses that we'd incurred, so that nothing, you know, up to a period of say 13 weeks, so 3 months, every day you can see it week by week up to 3 months, and then you've got your longer term. But you can monitor that, because, you know, things, particularly in law firms, from a cash point of view, can change so quickly.
Yes.
And you just have to be on it. I mean, I can't imagine being blind to that. It kind of gives me the shivers when I think about not having that in place to be able to see, because you could have, you know, you could have lots of revenue, you could have your best financial year ever, and you could be quite profitable, but if you've got no cash in the bank, you know, you're going to be dead.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's that you need to be able to have the tools and like you say, forecasts and whatever works for you in place to be able to predict and see what's coming in, what's coming out, almost on a daily basis, a weekly basis. Yeah. Because law firms are not like every other business. You know, we give, how much credit do we give to clients? I mean, what other service areas would you know, and other other industries where you're giving all of this stuff to customers and clients, but you're waiting however many months to get paid. It's almost like going into a supermarket, isn't it, and saying, oh, I'm going to do my weekly shop, but I'll pay you 3 months in 3 months time, it's fine. It just wouldn't happen. And I know we are in a different situation, but that kind of principle is the same. And you just, law firm, like I said before, they're expensive firms to run, and you know, the salaries of our people are almost out of kilter with how much you actually then bill and charge your clients sometimes. So you have to be on it almost on a daily basis, and it can become quite an obsession, because the minute you start to struggle, obviously you've got, you know, your reporting and compliance obligations. If you think you know you're in financial difficulty, reputationally, it can open up so many other cans of worms. So being able to see at least you know, at least a quarter ahead, and then a year, 2 years, with what you know is planned for the business going forward, it can't be underestimated how important that kind of document information is. And I absolutely would encourage firms to make sure that they've got something in place on that, because, you know, as we know, cash is king.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just having that knowledge, but it becomes aims that we were talking earlier about proactivity. It's a proactive document at the end of the day. You can see things like, I mean, I love a daily cash flow, right? A daily cash flow is great, because daily cash flow is really nerdy, isn't it? I've just realised. Sorry, listeners, this is very, very nerdy. But
we love a bit of nerdy cash flow.
But a daily cash flow is brilliant, because you can go, right, where was I yesterday? Here, okay, open a bank, right? Okay, bank is there. I'm now here. All of this stuff's just come out. So I've reconciled my cash flow to the bank. I know exactly where I am now. What's coming up? And
how much do you need to get in to be able to meet those expenses?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And then you can kind of plot, you know, if it's not on a direct debit and you're choosing when it's going to be paid, you can plot it. Okay, am I still within the the period, the payment period for the supplier? Yes. And all this kind of stuff, and then you just move it around and then you see when you've got money coming in and all that kind of stuff, and have a very good idea as to where you're going to be. And I like to see a cash flow personally, and I've said this to several of my clients, is I like to see a cash flow I like it to just be a steady gradient, just going up. That's what I like to see. I don't necessarily like peaks. I certainly don't like troughs, and I don't want to see any troughs. You always get one salary time. Salary is the only big trough I want to see. Other than that, I'd like it just a steady incline, or if times are tough, it might level out a bit. But I don't want it to go down steadily, because we're seriously doing something wrong if that's happened. And I don't want a big trough, because it's the recovering from that is the really hard part, you know. If we've got a decent amount of cash flow coming in, and then it drops a bit for salaries, and then it goes back up like that, brilliant, love that. But operating without that and being objective and being able to make business decisions, even hiring and firing. Like, if you're hiring, you got to hire somebody, and it's like, well, can we afford it? Well, okay, you can look at a profit and loss and go, well, technically we can afford it, but profit and loss doesn't give you the whole picture. You look at your cash flow and go, well, hold on a minute. If we're currently doing this, going down, can we afford to get that person in now? what's the overhead going to be? How long is it going to take for them to get up to speed in order to bring that cash flow back up? Or do we need to actually be more positive, put a cash flow in place in the first place, and actually really predict it really, really well, really positively, and then decide whether we're going to hire somebody?
Absolutely. And also what future investments you want to make as well.
Yeah.
You know, can you afford to do that as well? And bringing new people on is always a big one, because I think people forget the cost it obviously takes to potentially recruit if you use agents. You know, you've got the cash outlay there. But like you say, they could take some lead-in times, 3 to 6 months, depending on the nature of the person that you're bringing in and the work that they do. And you've got to, you know, find a way to pay their salary 5 times before they start bringing money in. So all of those things, if you're not able to plot that and forecast and model from a cash flow perspective, then it's something that, you know, firms should really start thinking about doing.
Definitely. Well, that's been really, really interesting. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been really, really good. Thank you.
Probably gone massively over on time because I just really enjoy these kind of conversations. And
I could talk forever about these sorts of things.
I love a bit of nerding out on this kind of thing. So yeah, it's been really, really great to have you on the show. So what I'll say is that if you just want to sort of give us a little bit more detail about ILFM, and if you've got any sort of events coming up or anything that you want to state, this is going to be going out at the start of September. So if you've got anything going out sort of in October or anything like that, it would be great to hear about it.
Yeah, great. So the ILFM is the Institute for Legal Finance and Management. So we've been going for over 40 years or so. We're a not-for-profit membership organisation, but we're also a leader in providing legal finance compliance, training courses throughout the UK. So we offer training on all things legal finance, compliance, practice management. We offer professional qualifications for cashiering, for people that are coming new into the industry, on the compliance rules, and then there's some of the more higher level financial management aspects of running a law firm as well. And we have lots of member support benefits as well as part of your membership if you were to come and join us. So we have lots of practice notes, published guides to help in the day-to-day operational role of legal finance teams. And we have a knowledge base on our website. We have lots of events. We have 2 conferences a year. We do a bi-monthly legal abacus journal where we share lots of topical issues that are coming up, things that have happened. We have lunch and learns where we pick a topic and bring people on to just talk about things, support each other. We have a membership community, virtual member meetings as well, where we have a monthly get together as a community to support. So there is lots that we do to support and develop and raise standards really around legal finance, compliance and practice management, because there's not much else out there that does that for law firms. So we're that community that can offer that support through training, qualifications, lots of other benefits that we provide, and resources as well.
Oh, that's great, Karen. Thank you very much. And yeah, I can attest to the ILFM. It's a great organisation, and I love being a member. So yeah, but very much taking advantage of all of that. To be honest, it's really, really great, and I'm very grateful to you for joining me today. Yeah, I'm Alex Simons, and I'm from the Law Factory LLP, where we do your legal cashiering for you. We can do consultancy and all that kind of stuff as well. We can do all of the stuff that we've talked about today with regards to lockup and cash flow and all that kind of thing. Just come and go to the www.thelawfactory.net. Go and have a look there. All our contact details are on there. And don't forget to sort of like and subscribe. This will be on YouTube and it will be on Spotify. So come join us there. And yeah, this will be going out. This is going out in September, so we'll see you then. So thank you very much once again, Karen, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to all the viewers and listeners. And yeah, we'll see you for the next one. Thank you.
You have been listening to the LawCast, brought to you by the Law Factory. Why not subscribe to our Spotify and YouTube channel and head to thelawfactory.net for more information.